episode 183 of the White Cat Outdoors podcast, bringing you to the table while we talk about the outdoors. Thanks for joining us for another week. We've been doing this for a long time, and we hope you guys are going to stick around for a long time. This week we're talking about bachelor groups. Actually, last weekend, Tom had his bachelor party. He's getting married. If you've been listening for a while, you know that. But we thought, hey, we're in the bachelor type of mood. Let's talk about Bachelor Bucks. So we spent the week researching why Bucks herd up together in the summertime, why they split up in the fall, and maybe with some of the information we learned, it can kind of help you guys for the upcoming season. So we hope you guys enjoy it. And without further ado, let's get tuned into this week's episode.
So I did the cardinal sin. I pull up my bow, and then I look dead at his antlers. I got out of the truck, and when I slammed the door, I heard gobbles all around me.
Let's see it.
Alaska, moose, spot and sock. That is the bucket list.
I agree.
White Cat Outdoors. White Cat Outdoors.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another installment of the White Cat Outdoors podcast. Thanks for hanging out with me, Nick, and Tom tonight.
Yep, glad to be here.
How's everybody doing tonight?
I don't remember if we mentioned it last week, but you had your bachelor party over the weekend, Tom.
I did.
It was a good time.
It was a good time. Blew some shit up.
Yeah, we did. It was great. It's tough to beat just shooting ARs and pistols and blowing up tannerite.
Yeah, it is tough to beat. Followed it up with a little golf, a little bonfire.
Yeah, can't beat it. But since, bachelor group, bachelor party, we're going to be talking about bachelor groups of Bucks, because who doesn't love to see a big bachelor group?
Yeah, I tell you, oh, geez, that is really loud.
Yeah, what are you doing? I'm
we're gonna-
echoing like a motherfucker.
Sounds like shit, Nick.
It sounded fine until you started playing with it.
Yeah, let's back those off a little bit. Sorry,
Yeah.
technical difficulties. Guess there's a new guy on.
The hell are you doing? That's not terrible. That's way better than it was.
How does that sound? That sounds a little better.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty good. Tom, you sound good.
Yeah.
All right, everybody's here for the mic check. Good to go.
We love it.
Yeah.
Now that I've lost my train of thought.
Bachelor groups, love to see them.
Yeah.
Sometimes gives you a little bit of a false hope for the year.
You love to see them come, but hate to watch them leave, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always like they leave right before the season.
I know. Isn't that a bitch? So we just kind of want to talk about, because we were thinking about talking about it last week, but we're like, maybe we should look into it, learn a little bit about why it happens, why they break up, because like you said, it's kind of heartbreaking to watch all these big bucks hanging out all summer long and then they disappear right before season. So everyone is like, what the hell? Like, I've been watching them do this exact same thing, and then as soon as you can hunt them, they're not doing that anymore. So
Yeah. So, Frank, I mean, like you said, we wanted to research it a little bit more because it's tough to talk about something if you're not, super knowledgeable on it. So you spent, the last week or so, researching and stuff. And you said that, based on the articles you were reading, there was like a few main points that kept getting hit. I guess we want to maybe start at the top of the list and kind of work our way down. Just have a little discussion on each of those points.
yeah, the first point that always came up, which in my opinion, I don't think this is the biggest reason why they do it. I think it could be a secondary reason, but it was usually the first thing touched on in pretty much every article, is that it's just a way for them to protect each other while they're without antlers, which kind of makes sense. They don't have their main defense mechanism, their antlers. I wouldn't say their main defense mechanism, but it is something they can use to protect themselves.
Every once in a while you hear of a person getting gored by a buck.
Yeah.
So I mean, it is effective.
So since they don't have their antlers, they group together to help protect each other when they're a little bit more vulnerable than they are during the season.
Yeah, I mean, I've never heard that, but it kind of makes sense. Like when you think of like cattle and stuff out in the pastures, they tend to stay in groups. And,
Yeah.
there's safety in numbers. I mean, wildebeest do the same thing.
Yeah.
Pretty much all like of that class of like that
Hoofed
class.
animals,
Yeah,
if you
hoofed
will.
animals. They seem to
Herd up.
herd up. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So
See-
it makes sense. Tom, what are your thoughts on the whole thing?
Yeah, I never really thought of it that way, but being that it was brought up, I think it totally makes sense that they would do that. Safety in numbers. I mean, turkeys, all birds flock up. Most mammals flock up. So why not add deer to the mix?
Yeah.
And another reason that I think, in my opinion, is the biggest reason why they do it, and it's something that I didn't really think of until reading it, but they are basically already establishing their dominance when they're in those bachelor groups, because typically, and this is going to lead into another point that I really want to touch on and talk a lot about, you typically see the same age groups of bucks in bachelor groups. If there's a bunch of 3.5-year-olds together, rarely are you going to see a spike running with those 4
Yeah.
or 5 3.5-year-olds. They're typically around the same age class of buck, and when their testosterone levels are lower, like they are in the summertime, they're already establishing who is the dominant buck without that serious fighting when they have the antlers where they can hurt or kill each other. So by the time that time rolls around, when they are fighting and more aggressive during the rut, they kind of already know who's who, and I know not to mess with that guy. He, over the summer, even when we didn't have our antlers and we were pretty tame, he was beating my ass if I stepped out of line. And apparently they do a lot of like hoofing each other.
Yeah,
in the-
we've gotten plenty of camera pictures of, like almost looks like the deer boxing match.
Yeah, exactly. So they do stuff like that, or just posturing, things like that.
It's funny, like without a mirror, obviously, they don't necessarily know how big their racks are, or like if they're growing them, how big it is at this point. But they know in the summertime to like, they're using their hooves to settle their disagreements. Where like I never see that during like hunting season.
Well, it's because they're velvet. They know their antlers are sensitive, and they're not going to start sparring with their antlers when
Yeah,
there's still nerves.
I feel like
in them.
some do because some of them get wrecked before the season.
I watched a documentary on bucks on the Outdoor Channel, and antler size is not very high on the list of
Dominance.
what makes a dominant buck. They actually did a study where they took the dominant buck. This is in a caged deer farm, but they took the dominant buck, tranquilized him, and removed his antlers, and then like screwed on like a basket 6 frame, just a tiny frame, and that buck was still the dominant buck.
Oh,
They said it's
yeah.
attitude more than anything.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing as people. I mean, we all know huge people that are gentle giants, and there's also, pipsqueaks that are just dicks.
Yeah.
So
that
it's
you
like-
don't want to mess with because they're pretty scrappy.
Yeah.
And there was actually a correlation that the bigger bucks on the farm, like, typically aren't the most dominant buck.
They're
on the farm.
more timid,
Yeah, they're more
kind of like
timid.
an old man.
Yeah, kind of keep to themselves. They not aggressive. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, you would expect, because usually you think bigger, better, stronger, so you think a bigger rack, he's the dominant buck, but like you said with people, doesn't always equate. Sometimes
Yeah.
their attitudes are
Yeah,
different.
sometimes
They're
people have little man syndrome,
yeah.
and other times they're big people can be giant teddy bears. So
Mm-hmm.
no, I've read and experienced that in the timber. Like I think everybody's seen, the forkhorn come in with its ears pinned to a grunt call, like looking for a fight.
Yeah.
And I think a little bit of that's immaturity, but it's also just like that, jacked up college kid coming into a bar. Like they just don't know how to handle their their attitude.
But that could also be like what I was saying with the Bachelor groups. That 4-point was probably hanging out with other 4-points and spikes all summer, and in his Bachelor group, he may have been the alpha dog in that group. So then early season comes, he's like, I'm still the alpha dog, and then you call him in, and if there's a bigger buck there, he's going to get knocked down the pecking order pretty quick.
Yeah.
So I have a question. I don't know if you know the answer to this or not, but everyone knows that deer, they summer in one spot, and then they spend autumn in another, and they winter in another.
Mm-hmm.
So in the summertime, when these bucks are in their bachelor groups, right, and they're kind of, if you got a bachelor group on your farm, and they're establishing the line of dominance, do you know if the buck that they figure out is the most dominant, if that's where he's going to stay? Or even if he is the dominant buck, he's going to go and find somewhere else to find does in the fall?
So from what I've experienced, hunting and what I've seen over the years, it seems like to me, besides, a 2 to 3 week window of the rut, deer follow food. It seems like their food source seems to be the biggest driving factor in location of where they're going to be. In the summertime, they're hanging out close to in our area. They're the ag fields, the bean fields.
Yeah.
Seem to be the heaviest hitters. If you got beans on your property, you're going to see a lot of bachelor group bucks. As early October rolls in, beans are starting to yellow. Deer will still eat them, but if you've got a really good white acorn crop, they're going to move to a property that's got, more acorns, apples, those sort of things. And then, in the wintertime, they're going to continue to move to a place that they can find food. In the winter, where food's a lot more scarce, they're willing to travel a bit further. But that small rut window seems to be the only time that they aren't finding food, and it's, like you said, back to does.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you wouldn't see as much variation of deer traveling so far. Just give an example, how often do we see deer in the summertime at Morrison that you see all through the fall?
A lot, yeah.
And what do we have on that property food-wise?
A lot of food.
And throughout the season. When we have smaller pieces back home, you're hunting 50 acres, 60 acres, you don't necessarily have access to year-round food supply.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's more food than anything besides that rut window.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
And I do know that some deer will move a significant distance.
Mm-hmm. You've seen that firsthand.
Yeah, regardless of food or anything, they break up from their summer spot, and I've seen them go 2 miles. Like that buck that I killed, it's been, 8 years now? I can't believe it's been that long. But
Maybe living in the past.
Yeah, but that deer, someone had pictures of 2 miles away.
And I think that goes right back to what we were talking about, attitude of every deer having a different personality.
Yeah.
And I relate back to people is a lot when I'm referring to deer and trying to give analogies. And it's the same thing, there's a lot of people that, are townies. They never leave their hometown. They graduated high school here. They work here.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always a few people that as soon as high school's out, boom, they're gone. They leave the country or leave the state. I think deer are the same way. Some deer are just meant to be homebodies, and that's why you got guys that have 3-4 years of history with the same deer.
Yeah.
And then there's other deer that pop up out of nowhere one random November.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think a little bit, Tom, has to do with, getting the shit kicked out of them. And, I mean, how often are you going to go to the same bar if every time you walk in you get your ass beat?
Not very often.
I think that has something to do with it, but a lot of it, I think, is personality as well.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a lot of the personality as well. They're just where they like to spend time, or if they have their spot that they like to go to rut, once their testosterone starts building up, when their antlers harden and everything, rolling into October, they know it's getting to be about time. I got to go over there.
I did real good there last year, so
they know where they're safe in the summertime. They know where they can get their food and whatnot. But once they start building that testosterone, they know where to go to breed, and it's not here.
Yeah. I know, the headquarters is a fairly decent-sized piece, but it's not massive. And there's a lot of deer that we see in the summertime that we do continue to see in the fall. But there's also a lot of deer that do pop up, in the rut. You and I saw last year how many different shooter bucks that we saw in a week's time. We didn't have that many shooters on camera all summer long. So I think, some bucks stayed around and there was plenty that moved in for the does.
Yeah.
So
No doubt. But one thing I did really want to touch on, because I mentioned that you typically see the same age class in bachelor groups. One thing I did read in a couple different articles, that if you do see a bigger buck in a bachelor group with smaller bucks, it equates more to season time. They say the bigger buck will kind of act like the younger bucks because it spends all its time with those younger bucks all summer long, and then obviously it will dissipate as the season goes on, but early season, I've had a lot of trouble hunting that wide buck I've been after for a couple years because as soon as the season comes, he pieces out and goes 2 miles away. And I can't hunt him anymore. So early season, and I haven't really seen him in a bachelor group at all. I've never had pictures of him with another deer, so I guess it doesn't really equate that closely. But they say the younger bucks are early season. They don't really care. They'll come out into a bean field and start feeding an hour before it's dark. They don't have that heightened sense yet to stay hidden until dark, and a lot of times it'll correlate to the bigger buck that hangs out with those younger ones. They'll walk out into that bean field with an hour of daylight left because that's what his bachelor group's doing. So he'll make some mistakes based on who he's hanging out with.
Yeah, and I had that. One of my best bucks I've killed was, I believe, to be a 3.5-year-old that I killed him opening day, coming back to his bedding around 8 o'clock, 7:45, so pretty late into the morning. But he was with a much younger deer. He came through with a very small, 13, 14-inch wide 8. Heading back to bed late, and I think what you're saying, he might have. Normally, he shouldn't be doing that. But,
he's smart enough to know we better get back there, but his buddies are hanging out, so he's hanging out. Yeah,
it's 7:30, 7:45. I caught him coming back from an ag field that I can't hunt. I don't know for sure, but they came from the direction of a bean field I knew of, and came into known bedding that I was hunting, and like I said, it was almost 8 o'clock.
Yeah. So I think that is a big thing that I've never really paid attention to, but I'm definitely going to now. If I do see a decent buck with a bachelor group of smaller bucks, and it's a buck that I would want to kill, I'm going to really focus on how they're moving around in the early season.
Try and get it done first week.
Yeah, exactly. If they're still all together, or one or two of them are together, even he might still be on that mindset that he was when he was with them. It could be a very helpful way to kill that buck because he's still on that summer habit a little bit. Whereas if he were hanging out with a bunch of 3.5, 4.5-year-olds, they're getting him into bed. They're saying, hey, we got to wait to go out into that bean field until it's dark, or we got to get back to bedding while it's still dark. He's going to do that, as opposed to if he's with the smaller bucks, he's going to hang out a little longer or whatever. So I think it would be a very smart thing to pay attention to if you do see that scenario playing out.
Yeah, I agree.
I am seeing that scenario play out.
Oh, well, good thing we're talking about it.
Yeah.
Do you care to dive into that anymore or no?
Let's just say...
This is over on your Ohio piece?
This is a piece that I have permission to hunt. I was driving by the other day, and I saw a bachelor group of bucks. And there was 2 small bucks and 1 giant. It looked like a mom standing with 2 fawns.
Really?
But it was 3 bucks. And this is, mid-June? And I've always said if you have a big buck in June, it's going to be a really big buck.
Yeah.
And this buck, he had probably 5-inch brows, and he was 3-4 inches outside his ears on either side. And he was with 2 bucks that just had 8-inch nubs, probably 10 inches wide.
Yeah.
So a lot of growing time left, but there's a big boy hanging with some young
No,
bucks.
Did you say that this was in the Ohio piece or the Maryland piece?
Yes.
Okay.
But yeah, so definitely something to pay attention to, and I would like to hear how that plays out and see if what I was reading is going to play out for you, because like I said, I've never paid attention to that before. So I may have observed it in the past without noticing it, and locking it into my mind that this buck is acting like these bucks because of this.
Yeah.
So now that we have some evidence, we can apply to it.
Did they say anything about why a older, mature buck would be hanging out with?
No, there wasn't really any reasoning for it. It just said that typically you don't see it, but when you do,
Capitalize.
And it's not 100%. They're wild animals. You never know what they're going to do, but it definitely seemed like every time I read it in a different article, they said it's something to pay attention to if you do see that scenario playing out.
Well, and that's the one nice thing about like having years of experience like bow hunting. There's a lot of things that we've witnessed that you didn't really log as that important. And the more you learn, the more you can go back and be like, oh, that's why I got that deer, or that's why I didn't get that deer, or that's why I saw this happen.
And I've done that several times in the past,
Yeah.
where I've seen something 6 times and then I see it one year and it's like something clicks or something good happens or something bad happens when I see it. And then I think back, I'm like, well, I've seen this 4 other times, and now it's all coming together why it's happening and what to do to work with that information.
Yeah. No, it's big. What did you have? What did you come up with, Tommy? Is there any
bachelor groups?
Yeah.
I did more reading on, and it's really not that complicated, but it seems like Frank did some reading on why they happen, and I did some research on why they disappear, and it's always like right before archery season. Sometimes, like in PA, we always open with whichever Saturday is closest to October 1st, whether it's the last Saturday in September or the first Saturday in October. But every once in a while, we'll get the season opened up on like September 26th or 27th or something. And you can get, 1 week where if there's a bachelor group holding together late, but usually by October, they're pretty well dissipated. But I guess the main reason, and it's an obvious reason, is testosterone territory, the rut's coming in. But it's just, it sucks because on camera you're watching them all summer and you think you got them figured out, and then come October.
And it really sucks because you don't even have enough time to learn something new. Like, as soon as they break up and change, it's time to hunt them.
Yeah.
So it's not like you even have a couple weeks outside of season to say, okay, this is what's happening, here's how I can attack it. It's like 2 days before the season, they're like, all right, what do you say we split up now?
Yeah, it'd almost be better if they broke up like early September.
Yeah, I agree, because then you can get some new intel that actually equates to your hunting situations.
I think that's a big reason, like, that got me into being as mobile as possible, is being able to, like, okay, 2 days before the season, all of a sudden this bachelor group's not happening anymore. I feel okay with jumping in the woods, seeing what happens. If nothing works, I just move somewhere else.
Yeah.
I think that's key for when bucks are, in that stage of breaking up like that, is being able to move and adjust quickly.
Yeah.
And not, I already got this ladder stand here. I don't really feel like moving that today. I got work. Like, if you just are prepared to bring your stand in every single time you hunt, you can make live adjustments.
Yeah.
You can think you're going one place, on your way in, and end up in another. And I do that all the time. I would say probably 60% of the time, I actually go where I'm anticipating being.
Yeah. Other times you're walking in, you see something that catches your eye, you find a hot scrape, or you see something that really pulls you into an area.
I've gone walking in and I blow 2 does, within 30 yards. I'm like, okay, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'll set up right there and I'll see deer all night from that spot. Like, it's just, you never know. So that's just one of the benefits. I know we talk about it quite a bit on here about how important being mobile is to all of our success over the years. So I just wanted to touch on that again. If you're still, on the fence about getting mobile, it's in today's world, and like mobile hunting is so huge. There's so many different options. Some more affordable options out there now that can get you, in a tree quicker for a lot less money and a lot less effort. But what else, guys? You had...
I feel like Tommy was still kind of making a point.
Yeah,
no,
Tom.
that was pretty much it. No, I went up before I was so rudely interrupted. I got most of what I needed to say out. But Nick didn't think it was that important, so...
I did think it was important. I was touching base
No,
on
it's
what you were
fine.
talking.
What he had to say was more important.
No, I was like building on top of yours. Building beside yours.
Yeah. Nick's always got to be on top.
Yeah. No, that was pretty much it.
Yeah. Well, if I remember correctly, it's summertime, and we've got plans to do something right after this podcast that everybody should be doing at this time of year.
Shooting her bows. Big time.
Yes.
Big time.
Nick's not, because he's a bum and refuses to get his bow fixed.
No, I think I've got another site I want to play around with this year. Like while I'm getting, I have another site. It's already at the house.
It's been, 6 months since you broke your sight?
It's been
2 months.
Yeah, 2 months.
Get it fixed.
I'm going to get it fixed. I am. But what I'm getting at is I have another site that I picked up for my dad thinking he was going to use it, and then he didn't. So I just have it say, I got it for like $50 used.
What is it?
It's one of your IQ sites.
Oh.
You said you really liked it on your bow.
Yes,
so,
I like my IQ a lot.
And my dad really liked it, and he wanted to get one for his bow when he bought his new one, but they only had a left-handed in stock, of course. Like the one time that all they have is left. Yeah. So I was, on Facebook one day, and a buddy of mine had a used one for sale for $50, and I'm like, before I even asked my dad, I was like, boom, yeah, I'll take it. And by that time, my dad had already got another sight. It was already sighted in. He's like, hey, I'm shooting good with this one. I don't really want it.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. So I just kind of been sitting on it for the last 2 or 3 seasons, two seasons. So I think while this one's getting, I'm gonna have to send it out. I did contact them. They're gonna fix it up, send it back. But I'm thinking, throw this sight on, give it a shot. Yeah, hunt the season with it. Why not? And then, decide which one I like better. So thinking probably this weekend, slap that on there, start shooting, get sighted back in, and I mean it's gonna take a few minutes.
You're good at shooting a bow, so it's simple enough to get back in the groove.
Definitely. So I hope you guys are doing the same thing we're doing. I'm getting outside and shooting bows. I already screwed that up. I guess I already said it once.
Make sure you get outside.